So, Stephen Harabuner, why haven't you been teaching us herbs sort of by the memorization by rote and repeat? And why aren't we learning herbs here? Here's the herb, memorize this, and here's its conventional use in medicine, memorize this, repeat. Why have we been approaching? In fact, we haven't really focused on herbs specifically at all, but instead on this heart based cognition. Why do you teach herbalism that way?
Because the other way is boring. I mean, nobody likes to do that. Think of all the stuff that you were forced to memorize and learn in school. It's useless. Okay, and then how much of it do you remember? Hardly any of it. Everybody's gone through that, like, oh, this, if you're learning herbs, oh, this is echinacea, it does this. Oh, this is cedar, and it does this. When I was working with people, studying with people like that, I might learn 150 herbs in 2 days. How many of them could I remember? Like two. It just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, if somebody has a personal experience of a single plant, like many people over these 4 days have had very strong experiences with a wonderful plant here called Devil's Club. And the plant is so powerful in their experience, they'll never forget that plant. Or all of the work we've done with cedar, the experience is so powerful, they'll never forget that plant. And when you know it here in your experience, then you're really working with the medicine of the plant. You're not using it as a raw drug through some sort of a reductionistic dynamic. And when you add in this other part, the healing dynamics are a lot more potent and powerful. They just are. I've seen it for over 20 years.
Mm-hmm. How important is it for, say, somebody who's maybe not interested in pursuing necessarily herbalism as a career, but is interested in herbalism, or the fledgling herbalist? How important is it for them to follow a system in the sense of, say, Chinese herbalism or South American herbalism or Western herbalism? How important is it to be part of a tradition like that? How valuable are those?
Well, a lot of people find a lot of value in those systems, okay? I mean, I can't say that's not true. Some of them have done really great work there, and people have really found their home there. I happen to think that there is a very powerful traditional North American herbal form that's not so much part of First Peoples or First Nations, let's say, but there was this blend that began to happen in the 16, 17, 1800s of the European settlers here, and it kind of blended with the native peoples, and we have this very unique form of herbalism here. You might call it community herbalism, or it's just a simple community-based herbalism dynamic, but it's based out of people who are in their location, working with the plants that grow there, the people that live there, and learning the knowledge that way. And that's the kind of herbalism I like the most.
I'm always encouraging the people who follow my work to harvest their own medicine, to learn some of these plants. I think it's so much more valuable to know a few plants in your area than it is to know 100 plants from far away. I'm curious if what your comment would be on how much more valuable is a plant harvested by you consciously and made into medicine by you, say, compared to a herb off the shelf from the health food store that's been prepared or manufactured maybe in a more factory kind of a setting?
My experience is that the herbs that you gather yourself out of deep personal relationship, the medicine's a lot stronger. Mm-hmm. And what's more, you can control the quality a lot better. In spite of the fact that the governments have passed manufacturing standards for herbal medicines now, they're basically herbaceuticals, the quality often is not good. It's poor. When you're making it yourself, you can literally tell if the plant's vibrant and healthy. You can tell when it's most strong. You can tell if it wants to be harvested or not. And when you make it in the medicine, you can tell if the medicine's good. And when you give it to somebody, there's this personal relationship that's involved. It's not industrial production, and that makes a huge difference. It's just the difference between a handmade plate or clothes or furniture and something made in a factory. It's just that exact difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. Shifting gears a little bit here, these are sort of plague times, right? These are times where we have the not just the plague of heart disease, not just the plague of cancer, which are taking out almost the entire population these days, but we also have the Lyme spirochete, we have MRSA, we have emerging viruses. what are your top sort of few plague herbs that really come from North America, or maybe just in general? What are your top plague herbs? What do people need to know about if they want to protect themselves from those kind of emerging diseases?
Well, a lot of the times, the herbs you need are going to grow around where you are. One herb in general that I'm a huge fan of, and it's not native to North America yet, is an herb called Cryptolepis sanguinolenta. It's from Ghana mostly, and it's one of the very few broadly systemic antibacterial herbs that I know of. It's great for malaria, but it's great for MRSA. It's like a broad spectrum antibiotic, very potent. No side effects that are known. It's a great herb. Artemisia annua is a great herb along those lines, not really as strong. Japanese knotweed is a phenomenal plant. It's an invasive botanical that's growing everywhere now. It's a very, very good herb for Lyme, but any kind of meningitis or things like that. And I'm real fond of the evergreens too. I mean, they're very antibacterial. They're very good for lungs. They're very good for wound infections. It doesn't matter whether you're working with pine or fir or cedar or juniper. They're all tremendously useful, very antibacterial.
Excellent.
Stephen's books on herbalism have been some of the most informative and formative books that I've read on botany and on herbalism and on the indigenous understanding of herbalism. One of the things I like about Stephen is he brings this idea of the indigenous mind, or how the indigenous people viewed herbalism, which is very different from the way that the modern scientific mind sees it. Modern scientific mind always breaking plants down into their chemicals, and what Stephen really brings is an idea of how we can communicate with plants directly from the place of the heart. The 5-day workshop I did with him was about communication with plants rather than about what chemicals are in plants. Some of his books that I was most moved by, I'd say the book I was most moved by would be The Secret Teaching of Plants, and there's a link here on the site for you to find that book. Also really like his book Sacred Healing Herbal Beers, another fantastic book by him, and some of his more technical books as well, like his books on Lyme's disease, which are very helpful for me living up in the Northeast, where Lyme's disease is somewhat epidemic or even pandemic. So there's some links here on the site. If you're interested in his books, check them out, support him. He's an amazing herbalist and probably one of the greatest on the planet today.